Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Connection Project. This is part two of my self-love, Brené Brown um, topic that I have been kind of entrenched in. And so, welcome, Sally Davidson here with the Connection Project. Here again to just share some of, I don't even want to say wisdom, but some of my thoughts on my self-healing journey and just as I tap into more connection. And so just want to start off this part two as we get into the 10 rules for self-love, finish them up, coming from the amazing Brené Brown. I just want to read a quote from her to start us off. Love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow. A connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within each one of them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Let that sink in for a moment. Let that kind of simmer. How does that make you feel? We can only connect and love as much as we love ourselves. So, why is it so hard for us to love ourselves? That's the question. We're always trying to I don't know, move through life and serve and love others and get validated. And when it really comes back to loving ourselves, we have trouble. And it really is about self and about community. So yeah, I just wanted to start out with that because I thought that was pretty profound. And she's always profound with her teachings. So back in at it. I know I left you with part one, and I just wanted to finish off about this self-love series because I think there's so much here. And so when we started off, the last podcast, we talked about the 10 rules for self-love. One is you are enough. Two, share your whole story and your whole heart. Three, engage with the world. Four, vulnerability is the birthplace of love. Five, get vulnerable. Six, let go of your armor. Seven, speak to yourself the way you speak to someone you love. Eight, let go of perfectionism. Okay, that's a big one. Be grateful, number nine, and practice authenticity. So I think the last time I was talking about this, we went through a few of these, but this spoke to me as a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a person who is trying to start a business, is in a business. And so for my coaches out there, my entrepreneurs, I mean, self-love is for everybody, but this really resonated because when you're starting your business, all this shit comes up. And I think I mentioned that last time. So let me get into, we started last time when we talked about you are enough and sharing your whole story and your whole heart. Like really, if you're not your authentic self, it really is hard, right? To be in love with yourself if you're not really taking all of that in. And so I really wanted to talk about those two. I talked about those last time. Um, Sharing your whole story and your whole heart. So the third one is engaging with the world. So engaging with the world, what does that even mean, right? But you can't just like live in a bubble, right? We need to engage. We need to be out in the world. And so many times in the self-development world, I have found this a lot when we're on our own healing journeys. And I talk about this a lot. You know, you have to heal what's inside. You have to heal your own heart. You have to learn how to love yourself. Um, but you also have to engage in community. Community and connection is such a big part of this, right? What you give out. So your energy within is also what's going to bring the energy back to you. So it's about waking up in the morning, saying I'm worthy of love, engaging with the world around you. It's not just the people, it's nature, it's the air, it's the birds. I'm looking out my window right now, right? The sun, all that goes on around us. You do belong in the world, right? So you want to engage in it when you wake up in the morning, when you step out the door, from a place of worthiness, not a place of shame, not a place of regret or shame, all those things that can kind of hold us back. It's from a place of like, oh, I belong here. I am part of what makes up this world that spins, interacting from a grounded place, like coming up in the morning, having your morning practices, which is a great way to get grounded, and stepping into the world from this place of um, connectedness, from self-love, from worthiness. Um, and when you look at yourself in the mirror and you connect with that worthiness and that self-love, what you see in the world will project back to you. If we get up in the morning and we don't interact, we're kind of miserable, curmudgeon-y. We all know those people. I have been that person before, right? No one wants to even talk to me. Then that's what we put out in the world and that's what we get back. And then we just keep creating more and more of that. So just interacting and engaging with the world around you and knowing that you are part of it and you belong is a really important piece of one of the things she talks about in self-love. Number 4, vulnerability is the birthplace of love. Vulnerability, right? Like, so if you followed Brené Brown, she has the huge TED Talks and these books, and there's so much about vulnerability, and it is so important for us to get vulnerable with ourselves, right? We can't ask other people to be vulnerable if we're not really ready and willing to go there ourselves. And sometimes that takes time, right? There's layers and it takes courage. And so vulnerability is the center of difficult emotions, but it's also the birthplace of every positive emotion, according to her, right? So our emotions are hard to deal with sometimes, right? We weren't really taught how to deal with our emotions. We suppress them or we get angry, but what's under the anger? A lot of times fear, sadness, right? And so starting to connect and learn, and sometimes this is not an easy thing to do on your own. I definitely couldn't do it on my own. I had to have a guide to help me kind of connect with my emotions. And so now some people call it emotional mastery. I have been calling it emotional connection, like connecting with our own emotions, right? We can't suppress them. We need to feel them. Like if we're sad, we need to be okay with feeling sad and getting curious why we feel sad. And so when we start to connect with our emotions, it allows us to go a little bit more vulnerable, to not be as worried about what someone else thinks if we're a little bit sad. But the reality is, most of us have grown up like, don't cry, be a good girl, be a good boy, boys don't cry. Um, you shouldn't get angry, you shouldn't be resentful, but those things happen, right? You just don't want to live in them. You don't want to live in those emotions. You want to be able to process them, which is important. And I think vulnerability is a piece of that, starting to get vulnerable with yourself, knowing how to get in touch with how you're feeling and being able to articulate that, right? For me, starting a business, taking clients through this process, but then also being vulnerable with that. My life is not perfect and I still struggle. I still struggle. I have a team of people that help me, right? That's just the way it is for me anyway. And so vulnerability is really, really an important piece of this self-love. Getting in touch with what's really in here, being honest with yourself. How do I really feel? What do I really want to do? Checking in. And so that really is an important piece of this whole process. And that's number 4 for Brené. Then getting vulnerable, which is kind of tied in to where we are. Getting vulnerable. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, but getting vulnerable. Okay, now the next step, taking action. That old will chakra, taking action to get vulnerable. How are we going to do that? How are we going to get vulnerable when we're creating our business? If you're creating a business, right? For the coaches out there, the entrepreneurs, the people listening, it doesn't even have to be a business, right? Looking to get that promotion, looking to get that new job, the confidence that comes with all of this. How does vulnerability help us with that? If we don't feel safe, then we're not going to get vulnerable. If we've come from a place in childhood or as we've grown and we feel unsafe in our body, which comes with that nervousness. An example for me is if I spoke in public, I would get hives. Even if I thought I was comfortable in a job I had been in a long time and was having a staff meeting, I would have to wear sometimes a turtleneck if I knew I had a staff meeting because I knew I was going to get hives the minute I opened my mouth and in front of a group of people. I knew what I was doing, but I just had all these thoughts and it was a visceral response that just happened to me. So now I get online. Now I'm doing this podcast. I get on and talk about very vulnerable things, but I'm in a different place. But there are still things that hold me back. And so by not being vulnerable, I want you to ask yourself, how does that hold you back from your business, from moving forward, from asking for that job, for being more connected to your partner? Like, what holds you back there? I think that's an important question to ask. I think it's a really important question to ask yourself. Kind of think about that. Because sometimes we waste so much energy, and there's only so much energy, right? We waste so much energy worrying about maybe what our partner's going to think or what another coach is going to think or an entrepreneur or who's going to come to my business, who's going to pay me for this. Instead of just living in our truth, getting vulnerable that sometimes we're scared, that you are enough. You are enough, which was number one for Brené Brown, right? I am enough. So this is the same thing. It's really just getting a little bit deeper. Brené says the number one casualty is of a scarcity culture. We lose vulnerability. We shut down. So when we think we have to be vulnerable, then we just shut down. And sometimes that shows up as anger, resentment, judgment, right? If I thought I was going to have to be vulnerable, then I'm going to maybe be in my fight or flight and attack first. Back in the day, I would kind of attack first. I would get defensive because I didn't want to get deep. It would be uncomfortable. I would automatically, if I got asked a deep question, get all crazy in my body, but I didn't realize what those sensations were. So I would get kind of angry, like, why is that person asking me that? That's none of their business. And sometimes there is boundaries, right? I'm not saying you have to answer everybody's questions, but there is a piece of vulnerability, especially in your partnerships, that creates a tighter bond. When you and your partner both are able to put some of those walls down and get vulnerable with each other, it can really be beautiful. And the same can happen in your business. As soon as we shut down, kind of turn off that tap to the difficult emotions, we just limit ourselves. We limit our supply of creativity. We limit our joy. We limit our magic. That happens with vulnerability. When you start to feel in your zone of genius, in your magic. And we all have that, right? It gets shut down sometimes for a lot of us as we grow up and as our inner child comes out and she's like, whoa, no, Nellie, I don't want to talk about that. This is uncomfortable. This is not safe, right? And so we have to slowly create that safety. We have to learn how to anchor in, really ground, create more capacity within ourselves to deal with these emotions. And a lot of times, like I said, sometimes we need help. I definitely needed help. I had no idea. I was so disconnected from my emotions when I first started my healing journey. We have to know that sometimes there has to be bad for there to be good. There has to be dark for there to be light, right? If there wasn't darkness, we wouldn't see the light, right? It would just be all one thing. So just know that getting in touch with your vulnerability is really important. Number 6 follows off of this for Brené Brown, let go of your armor. How can we get more in touch and have more self-love? Letting go of our armor. And so what does that mean? Most of us, I have yet to meet someone that doesn't have some armor. Most of us have armor, right? We have protectors, armor. We have these things that kind of have kept us safe. Sometimes it's from childhood trauma, from something in our past. And we kind of are armored up, right? We're not going to let anyone bother us. I was definitely like this. I would get defensive. I would get angry. My voice would change if I was asked a question. I didn't even know this stuff was happening. Um, but that was because those were the things that helped me get to where I was and protected me because there was a lot of chaos in my life. And so I needed to learn how to control that chaos. And then when I thought I was controlling the chaos, right, that created these protectors came in and they helped me with that. And now I have created more safety in my body, and you can create more safety in your body. And then you can start to let your armor down. You can start to show your true essence. You can start to connect to the true magic that you've had that's in there, right? It's in there with you. And so we want to connect to that because when we connect to that and we let the armor down and we start to show our true essence, everything else blooms, right? It's like that lotus that comes up in the mud, right? We start to bloom, the petals start to open, and that really, really happens because we're not worried about what other people are thinking. We're not worried about judgment. We're not worried about those things. But it's more than just in your mind. Some of this stuff is stuck in our body. It's old, right? But when we start to work through that and start our healing, we definitely start to let our armor down. We've all grown up and experienced varying degrees of trauma, right? People think I didn't have trauma. I had a great childhood. Trauma can be, my mom worked and she wasn't as emotionally available because she wasn't even capable of being that emotionally available. It wasn't necessarily her fault. It's just, or she had to work because we had to eat. Um, there's so many different things. I mean, it can be abuse. It can be so many different things. And so we armored up at some point. We might have had to deal with the chaos in our family, and we were the one that kind of made everything okay, the person that kind of worked everything out for everybody, or sometimes someone in the house had a difficult job. So when they came home, we had to make sure everything was quiet. There's like so many things that we could talk about, but that just creates us to start to have these protectors, this armor to come up, and the armor becomes heavy. So even if you're holding up this pencil, right, it doesn't weigh a lot. But if I have to hold it up for an hour or 2 hours and keep my arm up, it's going to get heavier, right? So the armor that surrounds us, because of many things in our lives and many situations, it gets heavy and heavier and heavier. And that's why I believe that sometimes we just like almost like crack, like we can't deal with life anymore. Um, People are disconnected from each other, their relationships fail, autoimmune diseases happen, people get sick because we're carrying all this heaviness and you can't see it. So we don't think it's there, but it's there. It's there. And that's the armor. And what happens with armor is it is holding you back from being seen. It's holding you back from being seen. It's protecting you, but it's also holding you back from being seen. And again, I'm going to go back to the entrepreneurs and how I see this, even in my own coaching practice. You like part of what I'm doing is I have to be seen. I have to have my voice heard. I have to be seen whether people like it or don't like it, right? I want to be authentic. So you have to get out there and show your authenticity, right? The people that are attracted to your energy will come. So stop worrying about that. Let that armor down. It's so important. Number 7, speak to yourself as you would want someone to speak to you. I don't know about you guys. Think about this. We talk to ourselves in the most horrific way. Most people, right? They say things that are, I've said these things and I've heard people say these things. I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? I can't do this. I say this about technology. I can't do technology. But this is not really true. The more times I say it, the less I can do it, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so would we say that to a friend? Would we say that to our kids, to our parents? Would we be like, you're so stupid. You're an idiot. We wouldn't say that. So why do we think it's okay to say it to ourselves? Because the more our brain hears it, the more we feel that. It just happens that way. So when you're feeling unworthy, and we start to spiral. You're wanting this job promotion, your partner and you are not getting along, your teenager and you are struggling, right? You're in this business by yourself and you're struggling, you're starting to spiral. You're seeing, Mary is doing so amazing by social media standards. And like, what's wrong with me? And that self-loathing spirals and it continues and it continues and it continues. And it's just not productive. So I am a firm believer that positive affirmations help and speaking good to ourselves helps. I think that it's more than that. Like we have to go a little deeper than just saying, I am enough. We have to believe it. We have to start feeling it. We have to talk to ourselves and believe what we're saying. We have to put the Post-its up on the mirror in the morning and believe that you're beautiful. Believe that you're worthy, that you're enough. So that your brain, the pathways start to recognize that. Because if we get up every day and say, I hate my body, then it just perpetuates that. I mean, it just perpetuates it. I've seen this, like if I have gained weight, right, over the years, and I see someone that's maybe bigger than me, right? But she is carrying herself in the most amazing way. She's the most beautiful woman, and we're so attached to our body image. Um, and then it's funny because I can look at myself and be like, oh my God, I'm a mess. I have to lose weight. I should, which is just shitting on yourself. And then I look at someone else, and then I'm like, holy crap, she has so much confidence. She's carrying herself, and she's amazing. So it has nothing to do with the weight. It's all about self-perception and how we are speaking to ourselves. So a point for self-love, a way to get yourself more engaged with self-love so that you can be the partner that you want to be. You can be the business owner that you want to be. You can be the daughter, the son, the friend, right? Because community is important. Connections with other people are important. Is to talk nice to yourself every day, not just occasionally. Grow your confidence. Confidence will grow through the courage and the self and the courage to even love yourself. It seems simple, but it's not that simple. We really sometimes have to get past a lot of old stuff. But start to talk nice to yourself. It's so, so important. Number 8, this is a biggie. Letting go of perfectionism. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but this is really, really hard for me. Even when I try to stop, it continues on. I want it to be perfect. And then if it's not perfect, then I might as well not do it, which is so freaking crazy. What is perfect? Let's think about that. Like, what is perfection? Who decides that? Who decides what podcast is perfect? What business is perfect? What relationship is perfect? Like, who even decides that? Do we even know? So I challenge you to just have messy action in your relationships, in your business. People don't want perfect. So if I'm talking to the entrepreneurs out there, people don't want perfect, right? They want you to know what you're doing, but they want to see that you're human. Like we are human beings. We are souls living in these human bodies, doing this human experience thing, right? And life is hard. So perfection is not attainable, right? So we keep chasing this thing where they keep moving the line. So if I lose this much weight, if my hair, if my hair looks like this, a certain way, all of it, we're constantly chasing that. Chasing, 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 chasing. That is tiring. Letting go of perfection, being real, getting real with yourself. What Brené Brown says is when perfectionism is driving, shame is always riding shotgun. And fear is the annoying backseat driver. Mic drop, right? Shame is always following and sitting next to us when we are trying to be perfect. I have experienced this time and time again in my career and in my business. Trying to do what someone else is doing, trying to be perfect. Perfect. I don't even know what that is. And shame is always there, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I'm never going to be able to do this. I might as well just give up. And then my little inner child, my little girl is coming out and being like, yep, yep, you're not going to do this. This is scary. Forget it. This is scary. We're not doing this. No one's going to like us. We're not going to be picked for the team. It's just not working. All those things come in. So if you can relate to that, I want to hear from you in some comments after this podcast, because it is so true. It happens for all of us. So I'm asking you to get vulnerable and think about that. Think about, like, where does perfectionism run your life? Where is shame hanging out next to you? And what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? I've asked myself this question. Am I afraid to be successful, or am I afraid to fail? Or is it I'm afraid to be successful? I'm not sure what the answer is, honestly. So ask yourself that. Are you afraid of your success? Or do you just want to, you feel you're always going to fail, so you just want to fulfill that self-fulfilling prophecy by trying to be perfect? Be honest with yourself. Things don't have to be perfect. Messy is good. Messy is fun. Messy can be magic. Think when you were a kid, like, messy is fine. It's good. It's fun. It's magical. Get a little messy. Get a little courageous. Get a little vulnerable. For the women out there, put your crown on. Put your crown on and walk out. Like, you are all of it, because you are. Really an important thing to look at. Number 9, being grateful. Joy is really hard to experience. And I really didn't think about this until I was listening to Brené one day. And she says there isn't an emotion harder to experience than joy. And I really sat with that. And I'm going to ask you to sit with that. But it's true. Many of us have trouble just being joyful, not worrying about anything else, just allowing the joy to come in. If things are going good, raise your hand if you do this. This is me. If things are going good, not as much anymore, but I still have this. If things are going good, I'm like, oh, this can't be happening. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Who can relate to that? Just waiting. I had a new opportunity recently that I'm exploring, and it sounds exciting, and I am excited, and I don't know where it'll bring me, but I'm like having fun with it. But there's this little piece of me, this little girl that's like, oh yeah, that's not going to work out. Stop getting excited. It's not going to happen. And that's an old piece that sometimes needs to be healed. She's so much better than she used to be, but she still shows up a little bit. And then I have to hold her with compassion and be like, it's okay. Like, we're safe. Even if this doesn't work out, that's fine. I'm not going to die if it doesn't work out. But sometimes we go to that level of thinking, I can't just enjoy the moment. We're so much in the past and the future, we are not in the present. So just think about that when you're trying to experience happy, joyous times. And so the suggestion is just to stop when there's a joyful moment and be like, I'm not going to worry about if those little pieces come up in you, like, is the other shoe going to drop? This isn't going to work. This never works. Nothing ever happens good for me. All those things that sometimes we say. Just count to 10 and then just say, I'm going to enjoy this moment. I mean, say it to yourself. I'm going to enjoy this moment. Doesn't matter about anything else. I'm just going to enjoy this moment right now, now, and be present. Because it's really, really, really hard for most of us to do that. So just accessing gratitude regularly. So gratitude journals, post-it notes. Because we have so much with our phones, maybe doing a voice memo every day to yourself, sending yourself an email so you open it, sending yourself an email the night before because of all the techies out there, right? I wish that people would get away from some tech, but if that's the only way that works for you, because we all communicate differently now, do that. Send yourself a voice memo. It's so easy. What am I grateful for today? I love writing it. I think there's like magic with writing, but everybody's not there. So make it accessible to what's going to work for you. It doesn't always have to be what works for someone else, but being grateful. A consistent meditation practice is a great way. I could get into this, a morning practice, a ritual. In the morning for me, I meditate every morning. I do a little intention prayer and I say what I'm grateful for, and that helps me. I like to journal. I'm just not always consistent with my journaling, to be honest. So finding a morning practice that works for you, a morning meditation, and when I say meditation, don't let that scare you because some people get so scared off by the meditation word, right? I can't meditate. I can't slow my mind down. And sometimes that's true. And we can talk about that. But just taking 5 minutes, if you don't have any practice in the morning, just taking 5 minutes to write down 3 things you're grateful for, think about 3 things you're grateful for. You don't have to sit and do a whole meditation. You can have your tea, your coffee, or sitting in the morning when you're not scrolling on your phone, and a time when you can reflect and just really think about what you're grateful for. It's great to do it in the morning, but you know what? If you don't have time in the morning, do it at night before you go to sleep. So that's your last thoughts before you go to sleep. What was I grateful for today? What was great about today? There's always something. We think even on a bad day, what we think is a bad day, there's always something to be grateful for. The fact that you got up that day, be grateful for that because there's somebody that didn't wake up today. So really think about that. That's huge. And the more we open our hearts, the more we practice compassion and empathy, the more it's easier to love ourselves, forgive ourselves, not live in that shame and guilt. And the easier it is to be grateful for the life that you have. And then it's easier to connect with someone else on that level. And so for the final 10 of Brené Brown's on self-love is practice authenticity. And for everybody, this is important, but for entrepreneurs, holy crap, like practice authenticity. Who can relate to just trying to be someone else because someone else is really killing it in their market or in their coaching or in their business, right? But be who you are. People will be attracted to that. And it's easier said than done, but just really settle into who you are. What is your essence? Why are you here on this journey? What are you doing in your life? Authenticity is a practice that you can choose each day. All of these are a choice. Am I going to show up today, let myself be seen in my true, authentic essence? Or am I not? It's totally my choice. Am I going to let go of the worries of what someone's going to think of me or how I look or what I sound like? Am I going to let all of that go and just be my true, authentic self? Hmm. Just think about that for a minute. What would it look like for you to be your true, authentic self? To not just be a cog in the wheel, to be truly who you are at your soul level. So many times we meet people and we think that, it's just easy for them to be authentic and we're attracted to their energy, but it is a muscle, right? It's a muscle, just like everything else, just like these 10 things that I'm talking about that Brené Brown is giving us so beautifully, but they're all muscle memory. Like we have to work at it. And that sounds weird to say we have to work at being authentic, but we have to work at owning our authenticity. So we want to build that capacity to be like, I can show up in my true authentic self versus for years, I feel like I was a bit of a chameleon personally. Like I could easily adapt, and this is definitely a trauma response, but I could easily adapt to any situation. What do the people in this group want me to be? What do the people in this group want me to be? I can do that. I was pretty good at that actually. Had no idea that's from my trauma. Just trying to fit in, not make a lot of waves. But how more magical it is when you start to embrace your authentic self, your authentic voice, how you want to be seen in the world. This is a huge one for entrepreneurs, business owners, coaches, healers. Like, what is it that makes you tick? But it's also for anybody, right? For how are you being authentic? So you're attracting your authentic partner. How are you being authentic with your family? Sometimes it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy, right? It's not easy to really embrace who you are sometimes. So I just challenge you to think about that. The more we exercise our muscle for all of these things, the stronger we'll get, the more capacity we will build in our body, and then the safer we will start to feel. I mean, I went from having hives in a staff meeting to recording this podcast. When I record, I have no idea how many people will listen, if anyone cares what I have to say, if one person listens or 20 people listen. I have no idea, but I have started to build my muscle on who I am showing up in the world. And it's the same for you. It's a slow build sometimes, but it's so important to really start to realize who you are. Raising your hand, asking for a promotion, all the things in your authentic self, finding the courage for that is so important. So we went through these 10 items that I think that she so beautifully put together. And if you have not read Brené Brown's work, I'm going to pop some journal prompts in the bottom of this podcast. And I'm also going to drop a few names of her books. I mean, I can't imagine, but there are people that maybe have not read her work. It is amazing. But I challenge you to drop in the comment sections too, like reach out to me. Let me know what you think about self-love. Like, how are you struggling with self-love? Are you struggling with self-love? Do you think there's no time to love yourself? Like you're not important enough to love? You should always put other people first. Well, I'm here to tell you that is not true. Even your kids. I know what you're going to say. Like, I always put my kids first because that's what we think we're supposed to say. But the reality is, just like the old thing, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. You're not going to be here to help your kids or your partner or your parents or whoever it is if you are not well. And well isn't just physically, it's emotionally, spiritually, physically, mind, body, spirit, well. And that starts in our heart. It just does. And I had no idea that that was true, but it's true. And the more you grow your heart and the more you grow your compassion and your empathy and your ability to love yourself, that energy, it's all energetics, babe. Like that energy will radiate from you and things around you will shift. I can guarantee you that. I've seen it. I've experienced it with my clients and with myself. So I hope I left you with some food for thought today. And yeah, I will be back next week to explore some other topics. But again, I challenge you, look at this list. Where can you make some small tweaks? Where can you love yourself just a little bit more? Where can you show up for yourself just a little bit more? And how will that then change your connection to yourself and to others? So much love for everybody listening today. This is, I think, a topic that is so important. And so I'm going to leave you again with the quote that I started with, because I want you to really, really think about this. Obviously, this quote is from Brené Brown. This is her work that I'm just talking about. Love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow, a connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within each one of them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Have a beautiful day, everybody. I'll see you next week.